Sometimes battle damage assessments are hard to come by, but other times, Russian TikTokers proudly display the damage of a Ukrainian drone strike for the whole world to see. You'd love to see it. Keep up the great work here, guys. So last night, we actually had a series of pretty interesting and unique strikes carried out by both Russia and Ukraine. We saw some bridges taken down in each country, or at least hit. And then, of course, this Sochi oil refinery strike that the TikTokers so kindly showed us in their video. Let's go ahead and start there. So from the Russian perspective, they say on the night of August 3rd, Ukrainian forces carried out another massive raid on the border and rear regions of Russia. The enemy's targets were again oil and gas infrastructure facilities. In total, air defense systems intercepted 93 UAVs over the central region of the country, as well as in the skies over Krasnodar Krai, the Republic of Crimea, and the waters of the Black Sea. According to preliminary data, the enemy managed to overcome air defenses only in Adler, where the target was a local oil depot. As a result of the UAV attack by the Ukrainians in the region, 4 people were injured. They say together with the strikes on railway infrastructure, Ukrainian formations are clearly trying to disrupt the logistics of the Russian armed forces in the southern directions, not to mention the economic damage. And then according to Ukrainian OSINT analysts at Cyber Borishno, they say Ukrainian defense forces struck 2 fuel tanks in Sochi. This facility handles aviation fuel storage, quality control, and refueling for the Sochi airport, as well as regional logistics and supply to key Black Sea hubs. And there's a couple different things I want to pull away from this. First off, 93 UAVs intercepted. So we spend a lot of time talking about the volume of Russian drone and missile strikes on Ukrainian cities. 93 is no small number. Right? And this is going to get into what I believe we're seeing is a shift that up until the last couple months has been a key Russian advantage in terms of long-range strike capabilities and quantity of munitions. That is not an advantage for Ukraine now by a long shot, but it's shifting away from an exclusively Russian advantage to something that now is becoming a bit of a problem for the Russian forces as well. Now, a couple ways to frame that is, first off, this strike in Sochi was around 600 kilometers from the front. That's a long ways for the Russian forces to have to defend. In fact, and it's not just the depth that this is happening, but the frequency that we're seeing these long-range Ukrainian strikes as well. So it's not just one every couple weeks, an airfield or a fuel depot or a rail hub gets hit somewhere inside of Russia. It's almost every day. In fact, just 2 nights ago, I was getting ready to put together a video on Ukrainian deep strikes, and the OSINT accounts that I follow online straight up lost track of the number of impacts. None of them were staggering or completely overwhelming in their impact, which is something Ukraine is going to have to work on when it comes to the payload or the quantity of munitions utilized in these strikes. But nonetheless, imagine that. We're 3 years into this war, and analysts that are spending all day, every day, trying to track some of this data said, I can't. There's too many impacts. Too many of these drones got through Russian air defenses. We can't even roll them all up right now. Now, I'm going to show the Russian TikTokers again here for a second because just love this. There's only been a few cases in the last couple years. This is, happened a lot at the beginning of the war, but definitely slowed down where you've got people just proudly showing, like, look at what happened right here. And the Ukrainians are loving this type of footage to see what actually happened at that fuel depot. No doubt those 3 in that video will probably get a call or a visit from Russian authorities talking to them about OPSEC here in the near future. Now, when talking about the changing dynamic in the long-range drone strike, Russia still has the major advantage there because they have more air defense assets. And when you look at their long-range strike munitions like the Shaheds or the Garans, they still have a longer range, much longer range, and a much larger payload. So when you look at the impacts from a Shahed-style drone versus some of these Ukrainian long-range drones, it's apples to oranges. The payload is just not there for Ukraine quite yet. So it does look like what we saw last night in Sochi was multiple drones getting through to strike the target. And you kind of need one or the other. It either needs to be one big munition to affect a lot of damage or a lot of smaller munitions. We'll see which one comes first for Ukraine, but that's clearly an advantage in the Russian favor at this point. One of the challenges that Russia is starting to experience more and more is they have a lot of territory to defend. Ukraine has a lot of territory to defend, and it's one of the reasons that Russia is able to, night after night, get at least a few drones and or missiles through. There's just not enough air defense, arguably in the world, to protect every single target in all of Ukraine. So decisions have to be made, and you protect key assets, not every square inch of territory. Russia has a lot more rail hubs. They have a lot more logistics nodes. They have a lot more airfields. They have a lot more oil refineries. They have a lot more everything. They have a lot more targets than there are in Ukraine. So Russia has to protect a lot more. And when these ranges of the Ukrainian drones go from 200 kilometers to 300 to 600 and beyond, it makes the area that Russia has to protect exponentially more difficult. And that's what we're seeing week by week here. It's really stretching the Russian air defenses, and it does seem, again to me, like this is a trend moving in favor of the Ukrainians. Still very much a Russian advantage, but that is settling out a little bit. Now, we did see a couple bridges get hit yesterday for the first time in a while, and there's some interesting aspects here. I want to start out with a Russian, or actually a Ukrainian strike, kind of carried out two different ways. This was a video put out, United 24 reported about this, saying a Ukrainian FPV drone destroyed a bridge over the Sada River in Russia's Bryansk region. The operation was carried out by the operations of the 1st Separate Territorial Defense Brigade. The strike took place after Ukrainian forces identified that Russian troops had mined the bridge, reportedly in preparation for a potential retreat route. And there was some speculation here whether this was Ukraine getting ready to go on the offensive, as in they're prepping the battlefield and making it difficult for Russian forces to either evacuate this area or reinforce in the event of a Ukrainian attack. It looks more and more like this was just opportunistic. Like this is going to make things a little more challenging for Russia inside of Russia, so why not? And if one FPV drone can bring down an entire bridge, go for it. Now, I do think it's worth showing the location where this strike took place to kind of give a bit of perspective here. This was up in Bryansk, so we've got live UA map pulled up on the screen here. Bryansk inside of Russia on the northern border of Ukraine, and this strike took place in the southwest corner, right along the border with Belarus. As we zoom in here, little further, let's see, I think it was right in, yeah, here we go. This area right here, I believe this was the exact bridge that was taken out. So you can see if this roadway is severed, coming down here to the border area, it does have the potential to cut off a pretty significant group of Russian forces, or at least access to a relatively large area here. Again, makes it more difficult for Russian forces to reinforce, move in, or move out. I guess the idea there was at some point, that's pretty extreme measures to be taken for Russia if you think about it, to be so worried about Ukrainian forces moving 7 kilometers into Russian territory in the north by Bryansk that you're mining your own bridges. That's not super confident in their first few lines of defense there. But nonetheless, as we sit here today, there's no indications that Ukraine is putting together some mass offensive here in the Bryansk region. Maybe that ends up happening. This would be something that could be looked upon as a shaping type operation, but to me right now, this does look more opportunistic than anything. Nonetheless, pretty interesting video of seeing what a dozen TM62 landmines strapped up underneath a bridge and then taking an FPV right on the nose. Now, another one here that I wanted to highlight was the Russians actually went after a bridge in Kherson. And for starters, actually, let's go straight back to the map before playing. We've got quite a few videos here, but I want to show you where this took place to provide some context. So zooming out and going to the exact opposite side of the country down here in Kherson. So this is the green here is Ukrainian-controlled territory, the red Russian-controlled territory. And when we zoom into the city, the strike appears to have taken place, it was right in this bridge right here. I believe this is the bridge that was hit that we'll show the footage of in a second, which means that this island chain here is now cut off. So it doesn't appear there's any other crossings, or at least not directly from Kherson. You might have to go a ways around. So it appears to isolate this segment on the map. Keep that in mind. Let's go ahead and play some of the videos here showing the Russian strike on that bridge. It does look like Russia used their aerial glide bombs to strike this bridge that connects the Korabel Island to mainland Kherson. The glide bomb in this case appears to be incredibly accurate, and that's one of the major takeaways from all of this. Now, it does look like they went back, so the initial strike hit the bridge, and we have footage not just of the bridge getting hit, but also of civilians driving up to the bridge and looking at the damage, and it looks like it was significant, but as we've seen in multiple bridge strikes throughout this war, it was still standing, and civilian vehicles were comfortable enough driving around that crater, that hole in the middle of the bridge. It does appear that Russia followed up this morning, striking it again with multiple other munitions, and it does look like that bridge is largely out of commission at this point. Now, a couple key takeaways here is, first off, that is incredible accuracy for a glide bomb. I think we're a little bit jaded here in the United States because we're used to, say, long-range Tomahawk strikes or GBU strikes, guided bomb unit strikes in Iraq and Afghanistan, or more recently against nuclear complexes in Iran. And we see bombs hit, something the size of a baseball on the ground, right? We can really thread the needle with a lot of our precision munitions. This is a different capability here. So this is a bomb that is gliding onto the target, and it's generally released from well behind the line of contact to protect the aircraft. So they're not generally within range of most Ukrainian air defense assets. They're lobbing this bomb, and to get it to impact directly in the middle of a bridge means that their guidance system has been incredibly improved in recent years. When these first came out, really the whole idea with these glide bombs was to allow Russia to bomb targets while keeping their aircraft safe. So they were gliding towards the target at first 20, maybe 30 kilometers. Now we're seeing those go 40 kilometers and further. And the first ones that were being utilized was really just against an entire town, especially around Avdiivka in the south. We saw Russia, you'd see 2, 3, 4 bombs fall from the same aircraft, and they all landed within like a 10 square kilometer area, and that's about it, right? And we've slowly seen Russia dial that in and make them more and more accurate to where we have this. That's a precision strike to go after a bridge, which to me, what we're the takeaway from all of this is that this is more of testing to see how this capability could be used in the future more than any preparation for any short-term attack. Again, to go back to the map here, this could be viewed as something like a preparatory strikes, kind of setting the stage for shaping operations for an attack in an area, again, because it's isolating Ukrainian forces or at least preventing them from reinforcing this area on the map here. However, the reason that Russian forces have not pushed across the Dnipro since Kherson was taken back by Ukraine in 2022 is not because of a bridge and reinforcements along the shoreline. It's because of the water obstacle and the marshlands and the drone coverage over this area. So with or without, let's say the Ukrainian forces are completely isolated here now, or they're forced to pull back in some way, shape, or form, and they no longer are in this area at all, that doesn't really change any of the Russian calculations in terms of trying to cross this river at all. It's still incredibly deadly. We're seeing very little. There's really been no large-scale crossings, and the small boats that are wandering out into some of these areas are quickly becoming pretty heavily targeted. So my view into what we're seeing here is Russia testing out the use of glide bombs against bridges in two ways. Are the bombs accurate enough to hit that type of target? And are they destructive enough to actually cause the necessary damage? And if that is the case, you can likely expect to see Russia expand the scope of these glide bomb operations beyond just Kherson, which is right here on the border between Russian and Ukrainian forces, but elsewhere along the front in an effort to try to further isolate pockets of Ukrainian forces near the front. Now, I do want to shift over to a bit of a battlefield update here. We got something from the Ukrainian Ministry of Defense, as well as Ukraine and Russia, talking about operations in Pokrovsk. Notably, well, let's get the map up here real quick to show the area we're talking about, because they do cite General Syrskyi here in a second, talking about the 3 key areas of the front that he's focused on today. In fact, that's probably the best place to start. An article in Euromaidan Press where they say Russia tries total infiltration in Pokrovsk. Ukraine boosts fortifications inside the city, according to the Ukrainian general. He says the situation right now is the most dangerous in Pokrovsk. So to zoom in here a little bit, I'm going to stay zoomed out so we can see a couple of these areas at once. Pokrovsk, right here, this bubble that we've talked about regularly in recent videos. Dobropilia, which I'm probably not pronouncing correctly, just north of that a little bit. And then the other one is Novopavlivka, which is actually over here in the Zaporizhia direction, kind of where we've started to see Russian forces advance near Plavny. So here we go. In this area here. So we're seeing a couple different, and these are reports we're getting from Russians as well, where the focus right now is not just Pokrovsk, a little bit Konstantinivka, but also down here in the Zaporizhia direction. Now, according to the UK Ministry of Defense, talking about Pokrovsk, they said Russia is intensifying attempts to envelop Pokrovsk, the key Ukrainian logistics hub which supports operations in the Donbass. In the last week, Russia has made incremental gains to the northeast of Pokrovsk that we've been tracking in recent videos, seeking to circumvent and cut off its logistic routes and ground lines of communication. They say open source reports on July 22nd, so a little over a week ago, coming on 2 weeks ago, suggest Russian sabotage and reconnaissance groups have attempted to infiltrate into southern Pokrovsk. With Ukrainian forces subsequently conducting clearance operations, Pokrovsk has likely been the priority axis for Russia since Avdiivka was seized by Russia in February 2024. Russian efforts against the fortified city have been made at heavy cost in Russian casualties and material. Now, we did get a video yesterday showing Russian forces moving into Pokrovsk a little bit. This was posted on a couple different Russian channels to show that they are starting to operate in the southern areas of the city, not just the outskirts anymore, but Pokrovsk actual. To that end, the interview here with General Syrskyi, he said the Russian forces are seeking weak spots, intensifying their activity and trying to capture important Ukrainian urban areas. Donetsk has remained the Russian main focus for many months, with the fiercest fighting and the largest concentration of its troops taking place there. This year, Russia has largely shifted from its infamous meat wave frontal assaults to tactics based on small groups. Instead of large-scale offensive, Russian forces now send numerous teams of only a few soldiers to probe for weak spots and defenses. Once a position is taken, reinforcements are brought in to expand and secure the gain. And this is very similar to the tactics we discussed in a recent video highlighting an analysis by Michael Kaufman just back from a recent trip to Ukraine, where he said, by and large, what we're seeing right now is just a continuation of small Russian probing attacks all across the line. In fact, just yesterday, the Ukrainian Ministry of Defense said that in the Pokrovsk area alone, they saw and repelled 37 different Russian attacks. And I want to give that number for some context here, that it's not as though the sun comes up and the Russian attack is planned for 9 a.m. and by noon it's over. You know, very World War I, World War II, like one continuous assault until it's stopped. It is constant throughout the day, mostly during the day, a little bit at night. And 37 is actually kind of on the low side. We've regularly seen more than 100 different Russian attempted attacks in the Pokrovsk region over the last couple weeks. Just the night before or the day before, it was 66. So you're seeing kind of constant small-scale probes, 2 to 6 man elements, trying to find a spot to break through the Ukrainian lines where they would entrench and pull up further reinforcements. In fact, General Syrskyi said that Ukraine is countering total infiltration with some special mobile reserves whose role is to search for and destroy these teams before they can create problems inside the Ukrainian lines. And we're seeing a lot of this in and around Pokrovsk recently, where there was about 2 weeks ago, an ambush by recon groups inside of Pokrovsk in an area that still is well inside Ukrainian control, so they managed to infiltrate pretty far in. And then, of course, we have the footage yesterday showing a small element operating inside of Pokrovsk. But we have started to see some pushback from this as well from the Ukrainian forces. General Syrskyi talking about how it's not just that the defenses are being built up in some of these cities, but they have changed their own tactics to where they have these small mobile teams actively hunting the Russian recon groups. And we saw a little bit of this yesterday when some footage came out of Zeleny High, which is a little southwest of the Pokrovsk area there. The Russian forces the day prior had, I think it was on the 26th, raised a flag and said, hey, we did it. We captured this area. This is now under Russian control, which is kind of the method. You get a drone video of an area, a clearly marked landmark, and there you go. Clearly Russian forces are there. But then the very next day, we have Ukraine's Timur special unit of the GUR said that they eliminated those Russian advanced units and then took pictures and videos of themselves in that exact same location. It makes me think that that's probably what we're seeing a little bit of over in Chasiv Yar to the east, where we get claims and some flags thrown up and then immediate with Ukraine coming back saying, wait a minute, our forces are still there. What is that? So something to keep in mind with a lot of these flag raisings is just give it a little bit of time. There's a lot of PR value in both Ukraine and Russia being able to raise a flag and say, hey, we're here, you're not. So anytime you see one, especially when it sounds like it might be the first or there wasn't really an expectation that, say, Russia had advanced in that region, give it a little bit of time to make sure it's genuine and not just one of these advanced forces quickly getting a picture and a video and running back to their lines. But that's all we got for now. Thanks for watching, and I'll see y'all next time.